Hello?
Hello.
This is me?
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well,
Huge fan. I want to say I have like a backlog of topics to talk to you about. I'm going to try to make it quick.
well, let's start with your name and where you're calling from.
Jason, calling from Minnesota.
Jason, you got a mall? Do you have a mall, Jason?
Yeah. I was splitting. I love the connotation that I can't be liberal and like split wood when I was literally splitting wood just this weekend and with a very old mall that didn't look new like the one he had.
Yeah.
I just want to say, you guys saved me from going down like a pretty dark path on YouTube. I don't know how YouTube does it. It just like throws right-wing stuff at you all the time. Like it just wants to radicalize you. And I don't know how. I think I just one time the algorithm saw your, along with all the other stuff it was trying to get me to watch. And you guys came up one time and it was so refreshing, especially right after January 6th. I was so just disillusioned and just mad. And like, I felt like when I found your show, it was so refreshing. Like, I think you said it one time, you guys, actually, what is it? Like find pride in being boring sometimes, you know, in the first half of the show, having real people on, letting them talk for an hour, you know, about good stuff. And I sit there and I listen to it and I love it. I feel like I actually learned something. It isn't reactionary. It's good stuff. I think your format's great. I love everything about it. I just want to say that.
So kind.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And it's good stuff. And I just want to I think I have a couple questions. One question, how do you guys find a way to not I'm just trying to say it. Not that you'd ever be a grifter, but you just seem like you guys have such a good setup and like you just run things well. And I feel like I find some other kind of leftist content on YouTube and I feel like it devolves into like debate bro stuff. It devolves into like, you know, it just doesn't maintain. And like, you just credit that to your experience, Sam. And like, because like you were on media obviously before, like on radio and stuff like that. But like, do you guys think about that and like how you stay independent and you don't like fall prey to like kind of, you know, going off the track and like just maintaining like such a laser focus on like thoughtful content? And I don't know, like if my question makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying. I mean, I think, I think part of it is that I had an advantage in that, like, I'm not, you know, my initial experience with this was not on YouTube. I mean, I've been saying years and years, really, that I think YouTube is very problematic. You know, people complain about cable news chasing ratings, and of course it does, definitely. In fact, we're seeing CNN make a big attempt now to reposition itself because they're sort of like they're trying to figure out how they can get ratings back. But YouTube, like the analogy on YouTube, it's like it shoots directly into your veins. Like every click is, you know, I don't know what it is, like 0.01 cents, literally, for YouTube partner. And it's very, I think, tempting to sort of chase after that. I think that's a big part of it. Gotcha. I think that is a big part of it. If you don't like, you know, and, you know, when we launched this, it took me a couple of years before I even like would do a year-long membership, because I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to do this. But it wasn't the idea of being able to make money this way. When I started doing this was not, there was nothing to take for granted. And I think, you know, a lot of times people say like, this is a viable business first, and then everything else is second. And I think that's part of it. And I think also it can get, you can lose sight that like what we're doing is a very narrow slice of stuff. I mean, I think, but, and I don't know, early on, I made the decision that like the more marketable part of this show would be the second half than the first half. And so I was going to do the first half. That was why I like, if this show could have gotten much bigger if with the first half was the member show and the second half was the free show. And I just made that decision that like, I'm not going to do that for that very reason. Like I'm going to try and expose people to stuff that they wouldn't otherwise see. And also my whole career, even in show business, was very much, I was far more invested in the stuff that would get me a lot less attention, but people who would be psyched about it than the opposite. So, you know, my sitcom work funded the stuff that I wanted to do, and was invested in, like, emotionally. But
and I think it comes through because you see like the weight of your experience and like how you corral everyone, and like the Dave Rubin clips, like to your point, like you know, just like riffing on Dave Rubin, how stupid conservatives are, got me like interested and pumped up, and I'm like, oh wait, Sam's on live. Oh, this first half of the show. Oh, what's this? Oh, an hour-long thing about, you know, economics or whatever. Oh, cool. Okay. You know, so it kind of, I think the funny stuff got me into the more serious stuff. So I think it's a good strategy. And I'll just say quickly,
as a contrast,
love you, Emma.
Well, you too. I'll say that just as a contrast to other shows that I know of, and that running a tight ship, like more confined staff, I also think like creates less, you know, it doesn't need to grow to such an extent that it's just becomes a profit incentive. That's what I've observed. And also being more historically focused as opposed to constantly in the churn of electoral politics, I think maintains that from and policy and being historically focused as opposed to like, you know, it's all about this election. For me, that's something I've observed that's I admire about the show when I joined as well. Yeah, I'm not.
No, I noticed that too.
I'm not a business person. Like, and you know, I will look at like, are we having a disaster on YouTube? No? Okay, done. And you know, and to a certain extent, there was a lot less pressure on me to make big money on this. I made really good money in my first career, and I never really learned to spend it. So it has always given me a cushion that I think on some level, but I think it's also just dispositionally, I'm not a business person. I would have much rather had somebody hired me to do this, except for the problem is they would say, we want you to do it that way. And I would be like, nah, I'm not doing that. And then I would quit.
Yep. Well, we want you to be conservative because that's just, you know, back on radio. Like to your point, I mean, I remember you talking about how there used to be more liberal, like actual radio, and that just what Air America, if I have it right, if I know the history, you know, and that just kind of went away for whatever reason. And then the Rush Limbaughs and the Clay Travises or whatever of the world, and you know, they're the AM radio right wing stuff now. And I think to your point, you kind of talked about, and I think one theme you guys, I like, you know, material benefit is one thing I hear you saying a lot, you know, like attack the Republicans actually have a message and stuff like that. Sorry if I missed your reaction to the Dark Brandon speech, you know, and I think I saw some of the clips you had, but I think if you guys said this, I'm sorry, but I think one thing I liked about that speech, and I think watching your show kind of made me appreciate it, was that speech. Initially, I was kind of like, oh, the black background, the red light, man, that's actually kind of, you know, the first reaction. I'm like, oh, that maybe isn't it? But then I realized the reaction it made the Republicans have snapped in such clear, like stark contrast. You know, the messaging, Democrats have been on their back foot for so long. And ironically, to Republicans trying to capitalize on it, saying, oh, look, Biden is like, you know, bad or a dictator. Now we're driving the messaging. You know, we're driving the message now. Now they're reacting. Now they're just spitting out all this stuff and nothing's sticking. It's all the same stuff. They're just saying more and more. And the thing is, there is not a single Democrat out there that saw that speech that wouldn't vote for Joe Biden after that speech. You know, it's only going to energize the people that the 81 million plus now they're going to vote for Biden. it didn't dissuade unless, I mean, and this is a question
I know what
to
you're
you,
saying.
I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, but it's just not going to dissuade anybody.
No, I agree.
Unless you say it will.
I appreciate. Regardless of what I say, but yeah, we'll talk about that. Let us let you go. We'll talk about that because
cool.
That's
Thank you.
Interesting take on that. Appreciate the call. Thank you for the kind words. I mean, when I first saw that backdrop, I was like, this is a little bit over the top, and I also don't think it is appropriate for you to have military personnel in the in that shot. I mean, obviously, a guard at the. But I have a feeling they're also there anyways, right? Where was it? It was at the.
It was in Philly.
Yeah, but it wasn't just at Philly. It was in front of like where was that? That it was at Liberty Hall. I don't know if there is. There shouldn't have been Marines in the background there.
And do I think that they were deliberately trying to trigger Republicans with that? I don't.
I am not. I think. There is something to them leaning in to the
Dark Brandon thing. Well, Biden likes it, right? I
really do think that they were trying to do that. And I think it's a little bit silly, but I also think that that caller had a very good point. Like you've got like it annoyed the right people. And I don't think that is why you do your politics, but that was just also the visuals, right? Like to hear some of the commentary, obviously from the right, they're all freaked out and they're back-footed. They're not talking about, he's got the lane open to basically talk about, student debt relief and this and that. I mean,
we're back to Dr. Seuss.
And
because they found their footing with They found their footing with CRT. They found it with when they were attacking Biden about and anti-trans stuff. They were energizing people, and now they're on the back foot. I do think,
and even the campists, right? The whole sort of anti-establishment pox on both their houses type of thing, and we're going to have some magical third way, and also the actual third way people all took issue with it, which is pretty funny because you're getting tone policed by people from Jimmy Dore's tone policing Joe Biden. I get where's the substantive criticism? And it is pretty fascinating.
All those people, sorry to interrupt, but all those people are sort of invested in not confronting how many sort of Republicans running for office denied this election, because then you can't do the whole both sides thing.
Right. And it is
it's just like calling the aesthetics of Biden's speech fascist while as a way to talk about the radicalism of the left, when it's really just Biden talking about how fascism is bad, but he looks fascist as a way to conflate it as the other side of the coin with the actual fascists. It's a completely convoluted message. It makes no sense.
Yeah. And so, and whether they did that consciously or not, I don't know. It's a weird sort of random choice to backlit something red.
I thought it might have been conscious until I saw the zoomed out photo, and it was also blue on the other side. So I think they were trying to do
red, white, and blue,
but it looked I mean, it looked like Dark Brandon.
I buy some bit of Dark Brandon. The advanced guys are pretty aware of the staging of those sorts of things.
But it looks like dorm room mood lighting. Like when you go to college and you're like, oh, I'm going to put up some string lights or have a red light in here. It's just so dumb.
But Ryan Cooper, when he was on with you, Emma, a few casual Fridays ago, I think indicated that at least someone he knew or a source in the White House said that at least either.
That's why I've been running with it.
Higher level officials or even Biden himself are tickled by the Dark Brandon imagery.
I came up with it myself.
And also of chiefs of staff, Ron Klain's pretty online. He tweets a lot. He's certainly seemingly pretty clued in. So it wouldn't surprise me if they were kind of high on the Dark Brandon Kool-Aid.
Well, Biden likes it because he feels like it's a connection to younger voters, or that he's, and he's right.
That's right.
We have a clip of a Trump in Mankato in 2020, though. I just want to play this. This is found by journalist Matthew Sheffield on Twitter, and just look at how shocking this is.
You know all about that. Take away our energy, if you can believe it. No fossil fuel. Destroy our Second Amendment, attack the right to life, and replace American freedom with left-wing fascism.
Flashes.
Left wing. We're going to left wing all the way. Fascists. They are fascists. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them. But they're getting closer and closer. We have to win this election. But the proud people of Minnesota will not let this happen. You know all about that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, throwing that around.
Right, exactly.
And I mean,
it was par for the course back then.
Right, of course. And I'm sure all of these people were like, oh my God, how could he do this? But it's really funny to see who's clutching their pearls now,
right?
About these things. And, it is important to point this out. And I think Biden said like fascist-like or sort of fascist. He didn't quite semi-fascist. And here is a point that I feel like I've made both on this show and sometimes like on Hayes' show when I would go on during the Trump years. I don't know that I don't know how much awareness people have when you get to situations where you're in a fascist state. How much awareness, at what point it kicks in, where the majority of people realize like, hey, wait a second. And it's quite possible that when you reach that point, it's too late. And from my perspective, I don't know where we are on that scale to getting to fascism, but you need to go through what we are going through now and have been going through for really the past 5 or 6 years. And maybe even, prior to that. You need to go through those steps to get to fascism. So it's not like we're not on the right path. We're on the right path. I just don't know, where you determine where we're at. But I think it really is, it's hard to assess, and it's important to call out because, and I'll tell you, and this is what else is like, I think is good about both Biden canceling student debt. Obviously I want him to have done more. And also the passage of the climate and the Medicare bill, insufficient as they are. At this moment, the worst thing that can happen is that people feel it is pointless and useless, and that there's, the best thing about that move that Biden did with the college loan stuff and the that legislation is that there's some semblance of like, at the very least, it shows people a path to a government that actually can provide and actually can do some things. It's not enough.
Contrasting it with semi-fascist, because if you say we're like on the road to fascism, right? And I agree that if the Republicans win the presidency, we are definitely on the road. Then you make that clear. You make that clear within the context of what you're providing and within the context of who they are.
Right. And it's not even necessarily a contrast with the fascists. It's just that it's also like a contrast to nihilism. And that is what opens the door, it seems to me. It is when there's a sense that nothing's going to get done. I can't remember what it was that I read recently, but the argument about, what led Germany to fascism, aside from like obviously the humiliation and the poverty and the austerity, was the sense that their government wasn't doing anything about it. And so a guy who comes in and says, like, I'm going to get the trains to run on time, that becomes the message that you hear. And Trump very much, sort of like expressed, I'm just going to get it done.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't really do it when he was president, but how is he going to get it done?
The dynamic I'm finding really frustrating is how all of these, whether it's the right-wing crowd or Rubin folks, to the Jimmy Dore style grifters, are helping the GOP hide behind their own supporters. Like, it's not Joe Biden calling out Republican Party fascism. He's actually talking about the voters. He's actually talking about the voters themselves. Like, yes. This is another deplorables. And I just want to read Jimmy Dore's description from his video entitled Biden's speech full of MAGA hate and division. Joe Biden traveled to Independence Hall in Philadelphia to deliver a speech excoriating Trump supporters as violent threats to the rule of law. Was he just talking about Trump supporters as violent threats to the rule of law?
They conflate that.
Democracy and the Constitution. That Biden delivered a speech decrying his detractors as fascists in front of a blood-red backdrop reminiscent of something out of The Triumph of the Will was not lost on observers. And, Jimmy...
Was it Triumph of the Will in black and white?
That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
I don't know, but like the fact that they are what
it was in black and white.
It was in black and white.
It's sort of like out of the chat.
Yeah, it came out in 1935. So right. It was in black and white.
He's laundering his protection of the Republican Party and like this faux populism where you're like, it's just like, I don't want the regular Joes, the supporters, the demonization of the Trump supporters. He's standing up for the little guy.
Yeah, you're Joe the plumber.
Michael from Bavaria writes, Weimar had extreme gridlock and repeatedly elected new governments. I mean, I think, and that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. There's like some sense that there's at least some movement indicates that something can be done within the context of the way that our government works.
And some more shallow analysis is that it helps Democrats electorally to get something done. Like, again, like our criticism of the Biden administration bringing Republicans into the fold for the infrastructure negotiations was that it's not about bipartisanship. Appearing like you're working with Republicans doesn't win elections. Wins, electoral or legislative wins and action is what propels you to having some more success because people want to think their president's doing something.
The distinguished Gentile man writes in YouTube channel called 3 Arrows, has many great videos on fascist German history and how it connects America. That's what it was. It was a 3 Arrows video that was talking about that gridlock in Weimar and saying that was, sort of like one of the real precipitating elements to fascism coming there. And between the 101 and 5, so I would recommend go check out the 3 Arrows. It's definitely worth your while. Really smart stuff there. Between 101 and the 5, I'd say the Bush era Iraq, Afghanistan wars really whetted the appetite for fascism for sure. I think that's true too. I mean, I certainly believed really the primary reason why I left show business to do the Majority Report on Air America. And at the time, I'll be honest with you, I thought, like, I'm going back. This is a 6-month thing. I think Judy and I basically said, we were like, we'll do it for 6 months, April to, November, really, and then maybe into January. And then, that'll be it. And because I felt at the time that like 2004 was the last chance for the states. I felt like what happened with the 2000 election and what happened with 9/11, like we were just on the wrong path. And in some ways, like we're still on that same trajectory. And the thing I've learned since then, there are times where I was like, oh, maybe I was wrong. And then there are times like lately, I'm like, maybe I was right. Because there's a certain trajectory. And what I've learned from doing the online show is just this concept, and also living through a pandemic, is that the way trajectories move is not a smooth line. There are spikes and then a return to a new normal. And then a spike, and then a return to a new normal. And we don't know yet if Trump was a spike, we drop back down to Biden, but things still simmer, and then like DeSantis or Tom Cotton. And that could come in 4 years, come in 2 years or 8 years. Like, history is just long. Like time is long. Trends are long. They don't have to exist in a 10-year period of time. None of this stuff is going to go away in the short term. And I will say this, that like with climate change, this stuff gets more intense and becomes more precarious. And, you know, in many respects, I don't know what we're doing here, right? Like, you can't really tell like what we're doing here. And by we, I mean like people who do what we do. And I don't have an inflated sense of the impact of this show in any way. I do think that like the nature of our audience is such that like they're going out and doing more than your average audience. That is like people that is the way that I at least perceive it. But there's going to come a time, probably well past where I'm around, where, you know, there's going to be crossroads and people are going to need to draw on history and other ideas in which to inform the decisions they make going forward, and crossroads that may be far more intense than our situation now, because climate change, and I don't know where, but right now we got like, a third of Pakistan underwater. You don't think that's going to have geopolitical implications? I mean, they have a nuke. They've got what was it 33 million people who were displaced? They're going to go somewhere. That's going to cause like a disruption, and that could cause tensions with India, and that type of dynamic. The Syrian civil war, in many respects, some people say was a function maybe of climate change, because the wheat harvest was down. They sold the reserves. Then the price of wheat went up. And then there was we don't know. And
migration due to climate change is going to create nationalism in pockets of the world.
And it is going, and maybe we're already seeing it. Maybe we're already seeing, you know, Syrian civil war pushes immigration up to Europe. Europe goes sideways. I mean, the important thing is just like, you know, that I like to think, I may be totally deluded, that our audience, and particularly the young people in our audience, my age cohort represents, at least in the context of the YouTube audience, I think our audio audience is probably a little bit older than this, but my age cohort is the smallest one that we have. Over the age of 55 is the smallest cohort that we have on this show. And there are other shows that do much better than we do. People who I like get much bigger numbers on YouTube, actually have a much older age cohort. And if we're going to have any lasting impact, it is like for 18 to 24-year-olds, 24 to 35-year-olds, and 35 to 44-year-olds, and 44 to 55-year-olds having ideas and understanding and been exposed to ideas and history, so that like when the shit really hits the fan, people are better prepared, at least intellectually. So, yes, Gowanus Monster, you had recently watched the 3 Hours America Coming to Weimar moment. That's exactly what it was. I didn't see all of it, but yes.
Very self-reflective show today.
Yeah, a little navel gazing for entering into the fall.